Where there's anger, where there's resentment, where there's arguments over money, there's a dead body.
You have no money.
On the outside, they seem to have the perfect American family.
This is a case that exemplifies the saying, things aren't always as they first appear.
Investigators sit down and look at this case, and really, is it a case?
Everything at the house seemed semi-normal, other than the fact that you had a 16-year-old at the house alone.
Until they found the van parked at the airport in Albuquerque.
And there was some fluid that appeared to be leaking from the back of the van, along with a smell that isn't a normal type of smell.
And to me, it smells like violence, murder.
Prescott, Arizona is like everybody's hometown, smaller town, 45,000 people. It's kind of a small town nestled in the mountains of Arizona.
It's the last place that you would expect to find a loud, fun-loving girl from New Jersey. A girl who liked to live on the edge. A girl like Laura Harner.
So Laura is this Jersey girl. Rough exterior, outgoing, in your face, I'll tell you like it is, and nothing bothers me.
She was just like Snooki and the characters on Jersey Shore. I mean, with the accent and everything.
Laura was kind of a outgoing type of personality from back east.
Laura went to Rutgers, which is one of the highest-ranked public schools in the nation. It's there that she met and fell in love with a footballer named Trey.
So she's in college, and Laura has this boyfriend, and it's a pretty tumultuous relationship.
Laura's dad, Melvin, didn't like Trey. He thought Trey was abusive with Laura. It's funny, here she was, this confident girl, not afraid to have an opinion, not afraid to express herself, and she's head over heels for Trey. I mean, he's a big bully. And her dad, Laura's dad, was concerned that Trey might actually seriously injure or even potentially kill Laura.
And he offers Laura a one-way ticket wherever she wants to go.
So Laura moved out to California.
Just as Laura was finishing college, her father intervened. She completed her degree and headed west to California, leaving her abusive relationship with Trey behind. She rented an apartment in downtown Hollywood and started her life over.
This is the mid-'80s, so to give you an idea, Top Gun starring Tom Cruise was the hit movie of the year. Think tight jeans, big hair, cropped jackets, and Laura fit right in.
Laura really thrives. She becomes a dental hygienist, living by herself, going out. She's the strong, independent woman who can and will do anything. And that's what happens, and she's really loving life. And then she goes out to a bar one night, and she meets this guy, Craig. And sparks fly. There's chemistry. And she finds a new man.
Craig Stelmasek. Really nice guy. Funny, generous to a fault.
Craig was a hard worker, always wanted to please people.
He was one of those guys that was just always smiling. And when Laura first lays eyes on him, that's what attracts her to him, his big smiling face.
In 1990, less than a year after they first met, Craig and Laura were married. When California's economy was hit hard by the dot-com bubble burst of 2000, Craig lost his job as president of Carvin Corp., a company that sold guitar amps. Because he was out of a job, Craig was having trouble making ends meet and supporting their family, which by that time also included their daughter, Samantha.
Laura is one to never give up. I mean, she has a plan. Okay, this is what we're going to do. All right? Let's pick up move to Arizona, and Craig, you can start your own construction business out there. And you know what? We're gonna make it. Because that's what I do. I don't let anything stop me.
Their California house was worth almost $500,000, so they sold it and took $250,000 in equity to buy a similar home in Prescott, Arizona at half the price.
It's a quaint little town. I mean, it's far enough away from the big city, but close enough to stuff, and near Utah, and, you know, it's a perfect place for the two of them to build a life and to build a business. And Laura sees great potential in this spot that they've chosen now to move their life to.
Craig was a wonderful builder.
Extremely good handyman, construction man.
He could literally do anything with tools, and so he started his own construction company.
You know, as their life goes on in Prescott, it's like they're living the American dream now. I mean, disposable income, they have lots of money, they have lots of things, they're raising their daughter. Everything seems to be going perfectly on plan. You know, Laura is that type A. Go out and get it and take it. And Craig seemed to follow that, and things are working out, finally.
Although, due to the economy, I think the business had started to slow down from where it was when they had moved to Prescott originally. So they began to struggle a little bit financially, but to the outside person looking in, they seemed perfect.
Once Samantha turned 16 years old, it seemed Craig was always working, so Laura started to meet up with her friends out of town. She'd leave Samantha by herself and even posted about it on social media.
Laura and Craig's daughter, Samantha, decides, you know what? I want to go back to California and see some friends. And she's 16 now, so she can drive. But Laura's a little bit scared of that. So she says, Samantha, you know what? Okay, you can drive, but I'm going to follow you. And they set out from Arizona to California.
Craig continued to work while they were in California. He'd stay behind.
They make it to California. Everything's great. Laura decides, I'm going to leave a couple of days early, and you can drive back to Arizona, Samantha, with a friend. I trust you now.
Laura returned home on the first day of June. Samantha returned 2 days later.
So Samantha comes home on, it's a Friday, it's June 3rd, and she comes home to their house and finds her mother alone in the house.
Laura says, you're never going to guess what happened. I mean, Craig, your dad, he's gone. He just up and left. I have no idea where he is.
And had turned off his phone, said that he wanted nothing to do with him anymore, and was going to start fresh somewhere else. Samantha wasn't worried about her father being gone. They had some property a little north of Prescott in a place called Ashfork, which they had a travel trailer on. And so she figured that her father was up there. A couple times in the past, her father, after arguments, had left and gone up there and stayed, a few days and then always come home. And so her thought was, he'll be home in a few days as well. She, goes to bed that night, and then come Saturday morning, she's getting ready for work. Samantha worked it in and out.
And then she gets a text from her mom that reads, leaving, I will be in touch. Let's just think about this for a second. Here we have Samantha. She's 16 years old. She's just told that her father has up and left the family. The next morning, her mother disappears to God knows where with barely a peep, and all she gets is this text message. What could possibly go wrong?
An investigation.
By 2011, Laura and Craig have been married nearly 20 years when Craig just disappears one day, leaving his wife Laura and their 16-year-old daughter Samantha all alone. This is a really devastating turn of events. I mean, it's a husband and a father who just up and leaves his family. And then mysteriously, the very next day, Laura does the same thing.
She had a bag packed and didn't tell Samantha where she was going and left.
Which is suspect, because here's the concerned, coddling mother who's going to follow her daughter to California. Yet her daughter comes home, and the mother tells the daughter, your father just up and left, but yet I'm going to leave you home by yourself?
Samantha, at the time she was 16 years old, and now that I have no mom or dad in the house, it wasn't like a big deal because, hey, no mom and dad, I'm 16, a little bit of freedom, so to speak.
Laura left on Saturday morning, June 4th, so Samantha was by herself all weekend until Sunday night there was a knock at the door.
On Sunday night, June 5th, 2011, Prescott police received a call from the Albuquerque Police Department in New Mexico. They had discovered a van registered to the Stelmaseks parked at the Albuquerque Sunport Airport in what appeared to be a suspicious manner. Prescott PD dispatched local officers to the Stelmaseks residence to inquire about the vehicle in question.
Police come to the door, we'd like to talk to your parents. And Samantha says, I have no idea where either of my parents are. Zero. I come home, my dad's gone, my mother leaves. She doesn't tell me where she's going. I'm at a loss.
This poor kid, she doesn't have a clue what's going on. It makes no sense. I mean, her parents could have been abducted by aliens for all she knows.
It's a Chevy Astro van, it's white. It was registered to Craig and Laura Stelmasek, and it's just the typical work van. They had actually taken out the middle seat of the van, Craig did, and put some flooring, like plywood flooring in the van to use it for work purposes. So hauling tools, wood, things like that. And it was just oddly parked in that short-term parking lot. And there was some fluid that appeared to be leaking from the van.
Investigators begin asking Samantha about her life. I have no clue where either of them are, what's going on. And investigators find this suspect.
She figured at that point that the van was not at the house when she got home on that Friday. So she figured her father drove the van. It was his work van. So she figured that he was in the van. Everything at the house seemed semi-normal, other than the fact that you had a 16-year-old at the house alone and the parents were not there.
The odd thing that jumps out is that the van is parked at Albuquerque, New Mexico Airport. If you were flying somewhere from Prescott, you'd go to Phoenix, right? So this is strange. Why would that van be in Albuquerque, of all places?
Albuquerque PD is in the process of securing a search warrant for the van. So they don't automatically just open up the van when they first get the call. They go out there, they observe what they can see.
The suspense is really mounting at this point. I mean, here you've got a vehicle where it shouldn't be. There's something leaking out of the back onto the pavement. And you've also got this smell coming from the van.
The foul smell mixed with the fluid, and then they can obviously see a little bit into the van. It appears that there's some blankets and things like that in the middle of the van.
It takes a little bit for the search warrant to come in, but when they get it, they're able to get inside that van. And, of course, all their suspicions are confirmed. There's a dead body in that van.
They find what appears to be a male who's in a mild stage of decomposition, and it appeared that he had suffered some stab wounds to his neck and chest.
And the person, a male, is wearing pajamas. This is too strange. There are so many red flags popping up for investigators that, they just have to continue to look. I mean, they know there's foul play involved. There's no doubt. Because a person doesn't kill themselves and wrap themselves in a blanket, number one. So that's out. So how did this guy get here in this van, dead, in his pajamas, wrapped in a blanket, in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
An even better question is, who is it? The body's decomposed to the point that the police can't identify who it is. We know it's in Craig's van, but it easily could have been stolen and used to commit a crime. So this John Doe body needs to be sent to a medical examiner to determine first and foremost who it is.
Medical examiner takes custody of the body. They take photographs and things like that. So Albuquerque does the whole processing. A few days later, Prescott police go to Albuquerque to take possession of the van, and we actually tow it back to Prescott.
The police immediately head back over to the Stelmasek residence. They need to find out where are Samantha's parents. And Samantha maintains that she doesn't know where they are. The only thing she can provide police is her parents' cell phone numbers.
And at first there's no answer. They leave some messages. They finally get in touch with Laura. She's upset that the police are even at the house. And she at first won't tell officers where she's at, won't disclose her location, and won't really give much details at all.
In fact, she's belligerent on the phone. She says she's so upset, her husband left her, she has no idea where he is, and that she just needed to take off and leave her alone. I don't want to hear any of this.
Finally, towards the end of the conversation, she tells officers that she's in North Carolina.
The other piece of this puzzle is Samantha. You know, she's old enough to talk to them and give them solid information.
There was some trouble in paradise. We got in and we started talking to Samantha. It obviously began to show that there was lots of cracks and what appeared to be a good family.
And sure enough, she starts saying, look, you know, this wasn't the Brady Bunch life here in this house. They argued every day, and they argued loud, and they went at it. And it was mostly about money, about spending. They were spending more than they were making, and it was getting out of hand, and it was causing all kinds of trouble within the marriage.
The way Laura is acting towards the police, and she's being so evasive, it seems like she's on the run from something. And the question is she running from something she did, or is she running away from someone or something that has her afraid for her life?
An investigation.
Laura Stelmasek and her husband Craig have been married nearly 20 years when they both disappear within a matter of days, leaving their 16-year-old daughter Samantha all alone in the family home in Prescott, Arizona. Samantha, being a naive 16-year-old, is okay with it at first. But when police show up at her house asking questions, everything goes downhill from there. The police find her dad Craig's van with a mutilated body inside of it.
They open up the back of the van, the sliding door of the van, and they discover wrapped inside those blankets a body that appeared to have been stabbed multiple times and was in a mild stage of decomposition. It had obviously been at the airport in the van for at least a few days.
They managed to get in contact with Laura, who has mysteriously fled to North Carolina, and she doesn't seem to want to cooperate with the police. Now, the police know there's been foul play, but at this point, they can't quite tell what actually happened.
Next stage is to, of course, go back to Laura and Craig's house, get a search warrant, go in, look around, see what they find. And they find absolutely nothing. Everything looks perfectly normal. Now they're stumped. They have Laura, a woman, a wife who doesn't know where her husband went. You gotta begin asking her questions. You gotta begin looking into her life, because everybody has secrets. Everybody. Something's adding up here, and it's not adding up to be that happy ending that Laura so much wanted. That's not gonna happen here.
The Prescott Police Department responded 3 different times to the Stelmasek residence for verbal domestics. And every time they would arrive, police officers would get on scene. It appeared to be a husband, wife, Laura and Craig, having an argument that was heated or was loud enough that, you know, a neighbor may call, or even Craig would call, due to just the nature of the argument.
So not only did they argue, but they fought, and they got violent.
I sit down and speak with Samantha, again, to get some information about family dynamics and other issues relating to, you know, their family and some of the history and things like that.
From Samantha, Detective Brazel discovers an important detail that Samantha learned the day her father disappeared.
She comes home to their house and finds her mother alone in the house. Her father's not there, and her mom was on the phone, and she had said that when she got to the house, her mom hung up the phone rather quickly.
Samantha becomes a great source for investigators because she starts talking about, my mom keeps like burner phones. And I've heard my mom like sneak off into a corner and talk on those phones.
She definitely knew that her mom was having conversations with other men, and it was driving a wedge between her parents as well. So they were not just arguing about finances or money, they were also arguing about this other man or other men that her father had found out her mother was talking to.
I think maybe she might be having an affair. You think? You think she's having a affair or affairs? Well, you know, we keep burner phones for a number of reasons, and none of those reasons are usually good.
The fact that her mother had been talking to, or at least engaging in conversation with, a man by the name of Marzette Ferris, who she said she actually talked to on the phone one time, that her mother had given her the phone, and it was this guy named Marzette, and they had a conversation about her SAT scores. So she had known that her mom was reaching out to, or at least engaging in conversations with another man. And she knew that man to be Marzette Ferris.
Okay. So clearly there are some fidelity issues going on here. Cheating and lies are not the making of a happy home, but the police don't have much to go on here. So the police talk to Samantha, they're learning things, and so they continue to pepper her with questions.
Different things about her parents' bedroom, where her father slept, what would he normally sleep in, things like that, or the bedding that was on their bed. Obviously looking for information from Samantha to tie to the things that were found inside the van in Albuquerque.
So while all of this is going on, the medical examiner is able to use the dental records to ID the body that was found in the back of the van. And unfortunately, it was the body of Craig Stelmasek that was found dead in the back of his own van.
On early Monday morning, the Prescott Police Department secures a search warrant for the house. And we go to the house and seize a number of things in the house, electronics, knives, different things like that, cameras, pieces of electronic equipment. Nothing appears to be out of place. There's not blood all over the walls. There's not a pool of blood under the bed. Everything seems pretty much normal inside the house. I talked to the medical examiner's office, and they advised me that there was no possible way that the crime occurred in the van, that there wasn't enough blood in the van to match what Craig would have lost due to the injuries. And therefore, the van wasn't the scene of the crime. We were still looking for the actual scene of the crime.
The police have no evidence connecting anyone to Craig's murder. The only thing they have is this name, Marzette Ferris. It's the man that they suspect Laura has been seeing.
We began to look into who was Marzette Ferris, and we found out through some different tools available to law enforcement that Marzette Ferris lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in that area, which matched what Laura had told officers where she was at.
According to police records, Marzette Ferris had been arrested for attacking a former girlfriend and her new boyfriend with a knife just a couple of years prior to Craig Stelmasek's murder. Stelmasek's autopsy confirmed he was attacked from behind with a knife.
Stabbed 3 times in the throat. You know, this is a very violent crime. This screams of masculinity, really, this crime, not femininity.
Craig got the strange voicemail message on his phone, and he actually let Samantha listen to it, and it was from another man, and this man was making some vulgar comments to Craig.
That is really a red flag. That is really something that needs to be looked at. They need to interview Marzette.
And then the real bomb drops. And I'm talking nuclear. Marzette Ferris is none other than Trey. Trey being the abusive college boyfriend that Laura went on the run from after college. Now that is crazy. But it begs the question, is Laura in trouble?
The patrol officer that actually goes out to the house, he actually asks Samantha, you know, where's your mom, where's your dad, and gets a phone number for Laura.
When Craig Stelmasek's body is found decomposing in a locked van in an airport parking lot 400 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, investigators discover that his wife, Laura, had been engaging with other men. One of these men is Marzette Ferris.
Marzette isn't somebody that Laura just met. This is the same guy from college that was abusive to her. Here he is back in her life when she's living in Prescott.
Laura could be in real trouble here. Marzette has a history of violence. In fact, after college, Laura moved across the country to get away from him.
Investigators began exploring the idea that Laura may be a victim as well. She may not have gone to North Carolina of her own free will, but instead may have been forced by Marzette Ferris, a man with a long rap sheet. This case had the potential to become a homicide and a kidnapping, or worse, a double homicide.
Police need to find Laura, and when they contact her on her cell phone, she reluctantly admits that she's in North Carolina. Lo and behold, Marzette Ferris lives in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And Marzette is working in IT, seems to be making money, seems to be doing well. So why did Laura run from Prescott to North Carolina? Makes no sense on one hand. On the other hand, it makes all the sense in the world.
And so at that point, we began to tie things together. We ended up finding out Marzette was in Prescott.
Marzette's flight records rise to the surface, and they tell the exact story that you want to hear if you're an investigator. He flew into Albuquerque, and then to Phoenix, and then back home to North Carolina.
Marzette arrived at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport on June 1st.
And then we ended up finding out that he stayed at the Motel 6. So he registered a room up here at the Motel 6 on that Wednesday. And so we began to tie that in together.
So they go to that hotel room, and what do they find in that hotel room? Blood.
Inside the trash can, one of the maids, one of the people that cleaned the room, told us that they had cleaned up some bloody bandages and towels inside the room the day after Marzette Ferris left.
And anytime anybody's involved with stabbing somebody, usually they get injured.
I flew out to Raleigh, North Carolina, and met up with some Raleigh, North Carolina homicide detectives. And at that point, we drafted a search warrant to search Marzette Ferris's home in North Carolina.
They get a search warrant from Marzette's house, and they just find a plethora of evidence. Bandages, his computer, cell phone, flight details.
We found different bags and some shoes that appeared to have possible bloodstains on them. The pair of shoes that were recovered appeared to law enforcement to be the same shoes that you can see him wearing in video surveillance from Albuquerque Airport. And that blood was tested, and it showed that it was Craig Stelmasek's blood.
What they also find is emails on his computer, which tell another story.
Marzette Ferris's emails under Hotmail, Yahoo, and Netscape were all under the same name. The reality was that Marzette was an IT guy. He was a computer geek. He had very few friends, rarely left the house. But in his own mind, he was this daring man of the world.
Some of the computers that were seized in North Carolina were analyzed. So there was a forensic examination done on the computers. And out of those examinations, there were hundreds and hundreds of communications that were located between what appeared to be Marzette Ferris and Laura Stelmasek through email or text, along with Laura's cell phone records, which showed there were hours and hours of phone conversations between herself and Marzette Ferris, or a number connected to Marzette Ferris.
This is really a turning point because there's a possibility that Laura's just a victim in this whole thing. But after the discovery of the emails, Laura's no victim. She's in on it.
Marzette and Laura reconnected at some point, and they started an affair. And Laura decided, well, I'm in the hole at home. You know, I love living high on the hog and having money because she was used to that. And you know what? I know where we can get money. We can get money if my husband's dead. That's how we can get money, and then we can be together forever, Marzette.
Craig did have a life insurance policy. There was a $250,000 life insurance policy. That could have been the motive. Or it could have just been the fact that she didn't want to leave the relationship with nothing and was angry about, you know, the way that she had thought she'd been treated and wanted to start a new life with Marzette.
The emails laid out the whole story. Laura, who was in reality this dominant, even aggressive personality in her relationship with Craig, played on Marzette's fantasies of being this superhero. Laura convinced Marzette that he needed to rescue her from this imaginary abusive relationship.
And the conversation began to turn towards possibly killing Craig at some point. They would call it taking out the trash or things like that in these messages. But on numerous occasions, they had come up with possible plans to kill Craig Stelmasek and talked about how they would do it or where they would do it and how they would set it up. There was an email about Marzette going to the house, and he talked about how he even apologized in the email to Laura, saying that he would have to mess up the house in order to make it look like a burglary.
Police went back to the Motel 6 in Prescott, Arizona, where Marzette Ferris had rented a room. When questioned, hotel staff remembered Ferris and said that he was with a female matching Laura Stelmasek's description. That female also drove a black sedan, similar to the car Laura was known to drive.
Law enforcement also gotten information that on the night of June 1st, pretty late at night, after a phone call from Laura Stelmasek's phone to the Motel 6 there, where Marzette Ferris was known to be staying, Marzette Ferris takes a taxi from the Motel 6 and is dropped off. And the taxi drivers basically described him being dropped off in the area of the Stelmasek's home on Meadow Ridge and kind of disappearing into the darkness.
And so they went back to the Stelmasek home on Meadow Ridge Drive in Prescott to take another look.
We execute the second search warrant. At that point, they had some skylights inside the house, so we waited till it was dark, and we used a blood reagent called Blue Star to see if there was any evidence of blood in the home. And at that point, the master bedroom on the side of the bed that we knew Craig slept on, there was a significant amount of what appeared to be blood using Blue Star, and it kind of just lit up bright blue and kind of painted a picture of how, you know, someone was on the bed, and it looked like the blood started there, and it became kind of a trail from the bedroom down the hall, through the kitchen, through what would be like a sunroom, and into the garage.
They left a trail of breadcrumbs here after committing this crime. You see, murderers like this is very interesting. They plan everything up until the point where they commit the murder, and they plan zero afterwards. They're just thinking about not getting caught up to the point, alibis and such. They plan nothing afterwards, and that's what catches all of them, is what happens afterwards.
So at that point, they were taken into custody and arrested, both for first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, concealment of a dead body, and Laura was charged with child abuse as well. That child abuse charge is in reference to the fact that she just abandoned her 16-year-old daughter and went to North Carolina.
A judge ruled that Marzette Ferris and Laura Stelmasek would not be tried together.
So they're facing separate trials, $1 million bond on each. They're not getting out. And You know, as trial dates are looming, Marzette does something interesting. He falls on the sword. And what does he say? He says, "I'll take the rap for the entire murder if you allow her to go free."
They were arrested, obviously, in June of 2011. They had $1 million bond, and so they both sat in jail pending their trial date.
In January 2015, 4 years after being arrested for the first-degree murder of Craig Stelmasek, Marzette Ferris took the stand in his own murder trial.
Marzette Ferris indicated that he did, in fact, come to Arizona to take and rescue Laura from Craig.
But Marzette had 4 long years to reconsider taking all the blame for Craig's murder.
As Marzette thinks about it, he changes his tune. He flips. And he says now the murder was all Laura's idea.
He said he arrived in Phoenix planning on helping Laura tell her daughter Samantha that Laura was leaving her father.
He said that on June 1st, the night that the murder happened, that he had received a phone call earlier before leaving the motel to get the taxi from Laura, and there was an argument between Laura and Craig going on that he could overhear. And so he goes to the house, obviously to investigate, and he says that he kind of knocks on a window. He can see somebody moving around inside in the master bedroom.
I hate you!
He said that he's still gasping, and he hears Laura screaming again at Craig, and he looks up and sees Laura on top of Craig, he describes, and continuing to stab Craig with the knife.
So the guy has an answer for everything, really. Except the forensic evidence, and except the evidence of the flights. That speaks for itself.
The jury didn't buy Marzette's version of events. Ferris was convicted in February 2015 of murder, conspiracy, tampering with evidence, and concealing a dead body. On March 16, 2015, Ferris was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of his alleged co-conspirator, Laura Stelmasek, began March 5, 2015.
Laura's defense is that, Marzette did this all on his own. That he's had a history with violence. He's not a good guy, and you just look at his record, and that he had wanted Laura really from the beginning back in college. Couldn't have her. He abused her there, and he couldn't have her now, and he did it on his own.
But the facts tell a different story, beginning with hundreds of incriminating emails.
The biggest witness against Laura turns out to be, who? Her own daughter, Samantha, because Samantha was an eyewitness to what was going on in that house. And Samantha gets on the stand, and she buries her mother. Why? Because Samantha is a truth teller. She got on the stand and she told the truth.
I don't know if it tipped the scale. Obviously, for a 16-year-old, at the time of the incident, when she testified, she was an adult. But it's, pretty traumatic event. Obviously, Samantha lost both of her parents in the matter of one night. And then to turn around and be able to testify to what she knew and what she had heard or saw and observed in both trials was pretty important. In 2010 started with Marzette apologizing for the abusive relationship that they were in and engaged in together in the 80s. That's kind of when they rekindled. It was more of it started with an apology from Marzette.
Did Laura ever love Marzette? No, Laura can't love. She doesn't know how to love. How could she love anybody if the man who fathered her child she had murdered? That proves she can't love. She thinks she can love. The other question is, did she use Marzette, manipulate him as a tool to commit a murder for herself? Absolutely she did. The evidence speaks of that. Absolutely. And the impetus really for this whole thing, if you look at it, is, again, one of the oldest motives for murder on the books. He had a $250,000, $250,000 life insurance policy on him. And you know what? Laura and Marzette saw that as the pot at the end of the rainbow, the gold. That's what they wanted. They were after the money. That's what they were after. We have a child in the center who loses both. Loses her dad and loses her mom. Samantha is another one of Laura's victims. Make no doubt about that.
That little girl, who showed so much strength of character in court, has a happy ending. Thanks to the family and those who supported her and rallied around her, she was able to leave the state, go to college, get married, and now, ironically, she works in the legal profession. The jury deliberated for less than an hour.
Laura's ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And to me, that's a just sentence. She took a life, she gives up her life. Simple as that.
It is a speed limit enforcement of 100 kilometers ahead of about 400 meters.